we have here, I might just zoom in for a moment so you can see these. We'll go a bit hazy for a minute. These are thumbnail sketches, okay? And this is why I may have not said it for the last week or two, but you know, I've said this so many times in the past, how important it is to make thumbnail sketches. And if we look at our photo, if you've got the photo to hand, which I hope you have, if you haven't, it shouldn't make much difference. I'm going to show you anyway. The design in this is so powerful, and it's why I picked this photo in particular. It is that, and if you're familiar with, you know, the potential, the strength of a good design. I mean, there are various sort of classic designs, from the L shape, this sort of whatever you'd call that, part of an S or Z shape. These are all powerful design, composition design, that show off what we call the movement, okay? And just to show you that most of these, I think all of them, in fact, all of these simple designs will work in both landscape and, whoops, let me just bring that up. All of these designs will work in any orientation, whether it's landscape or portrait, okay? There's the L-shape design in landscape. There's the L-shaped design in portrait. And of course, you can reverse this. You know, this L shape could be down here, coming in from this direction. So what we have with our Tembis is, if I wanted to really, here's a tonal sketch, okay? And I've made notes here. If we were to use the tonal sketch, I want to point something out to you in a moment. But what we're dealing with is that design. And it's probably close to, it's closest to, let's have a look, that one there. That's what we're dealing with today, okay? And I want you to, when you go out next, wherever you are, particularly in the landscape, you can almost do it around the house, but interiors tend to be a little bit cluttered if they're anything like my house. And it can be sometimes difficult to see to easily see the design in something that you're looking at. The other thing that helps too, bear with me, in this situation is a viewfinder, okay? So I'm not suggesting, even I don't do this, but I'm not suggesting you keep a viewfinder in your pocket, though some people will. But if you are going out specifically for an artistic venture, whether you're going out sketching or whether you're just out for a stroll, pop something like that into your pocket. A really small one will do, you know, a quarter of this size. That's really useful for capturing the image that you might want to paint. So this is what I did this is what I do rather when I'm out with the camera. I see the camera lens as this aperture, and you can see it in there. You know, there's what I could see, and I knew that this would make a really powerful design. It's got to be simplified. That's the thing. You can do it sometimes by just squinting your eyes and looking at an image, but it's got to be simplified down to one of these. I mean, there are more than the ones I've drawn on this. This is just half a dozen examples. There are many there. You know, you could soften the Z shape, the zigzag. You could soften that to an S. Play around with it, but this is the point. This is the most important point I'm trying to make here, is that it must be, first of all, the simplest of things, because it shows the movement, okay? All these things are about the movement. So after my tonal sketch, I took to drawing thumbnail sketches of the actual movement itself. And if I can show you this, just almost want to hide that one for a moment. There it is. There's my sketch. And even though the photo, when you look at the photo, it reveals all sorts of things. It reveals little boats in the harbor. It reveals a path going up the edge of this dark mass. It reveals a certain amount of tonal variation in some houses and buildings and stuff like that. But I want you to overlook that when you're looking for your composition and your designs, so that all you see is something like this, okay? But this photo, I got very lucky on this day when I took this photo, because look at the striations in the clouds. Now, some of those are aeroplane, whatever they call them, vapor trails. Some of them are probably cloud. So not only does the sky point us towards, which by the way, I've shifted slightly for the painting over to here, but not only does the sky and what's happening in the sky, these striations, take us to a point here, the line of the land also takes us, as I say, there it is, it's there, okay? Striations in the sky take us to this point. The shapes in the ground, this lovely, massive, bold curve takes us to this point here where my index finger is. There's a line at the edge of the water, takes us to this point. There's a pier there, a promontory, a pier, a dark line that takes us to this point. Even the horizontal of the land takes us to this point. So you cannot avoid landing here when you view this scene. And that's what is meant by, you know, creating the movement to take you to the focal point. So as I say, pencil sketch, all my lines. It's semi-abstract, isn't it? This is where we get good abstract ideas from. We actually get abstract quite often. I mean, I say quite often, that's the caveat, not always. Quite often we get the best abstracts, or some of the best abstract, from reality. You just have to break the reality down, the realism down, and look for things like the strong lines and movement. There, made even simpler, I've just used a red pen, and that's it. There's the movement, finger's still here, and look how it falls on the grid line, okay? There's the grid line there, there, and there. Notice I haven't put the fourth grid line in, because that one there is redundant. So it's the only line in the design that's redundant, that one there, okay? That has no purpose. So we're using the two verticals and the top horizontal. And in that area there is our focal point. And in all that, in just that one little thumbnail sketch, I've done everything. I've done everything I need to do. There's just one other thing, and that is the tonal sketch, just going back to that a moment. Okay. So I've sussed out the design, it's that, okay? Design movement, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing more or less. But the next issue really, okay, looking at the photo again, if you painted your painting with this dark mass, this huge area of dark, as I've done on my thumbnail, it's not going to work. It's not going to be a pretty painting, okay? And this is why, again, my warnings about working from photographs. People will rely on photographs. Unfortunately, what they tend to do when we start out, I think, is copy the photograph. They copy it for its design, which is okay, if the design is okay in the first place, caveat. But probably the worst crime you can make is copying the tonal values of a photograph. Now then, those good photographers of you out there will know that unless it's in the hands of a professional photographer, or there is some post-editing going on that photograph once you've downloaded it to your computer, darks will be very flat, and that's very much the case in this photo. We can't, this wouldn't work. That's not going to make for a pretty painting, okay? And I've deliberately copied the flatness of that big massive dark to prove to you that isn't going to work. So what we do is we would have to, and I've got so many things on the go here, a second. What we would do is when we get to painting, as you'll see, let me just grab a brush. We would make areas of this darkness lighter in places. So look at what's appearing in front of us now, okay? Look at what's appearing. If I take away that, all we've got left is that. that there. Okay, so there'll be some inference of stuff going on over here, but that will make for a much more pleasing thing to look at. We take a little bit of light out somewhere else, but we'll do that as we paint. So I hope that's proved a really useful bit of advice and information for you.
Before we continue, please consider subscribing to my channel, and if you want immediate notifications as to when I upload a new video, then please remember to also click on the bell icon.
Okay, let's make a start. So not forgetting that we've entitled this painting Big Sky, okay, because it's not always you'll get a sky that's lending itself to emphasize this design. Okay, so I'm putting in lines. I suggest you don't draw in lines yourself there if you can help it. I'm just doing that so you can sort of see. When the painting is dry, I will erase, just take a soft putty eraser and erase the pencil lines out of the sky there. But here's that thing. Here's the, all I'm going to do is put in some horizontals here for the landmass. Now, if we think about that grid, it's the vertical line is somewhere around here, something like that. And as I say, there's no point in putting in the bottom horizontal, it's redundant. So we want to move, there's that little pinnacle here that I think it's the old museum now at Tenby, where my pencil lead is there. Now that's a bit central, isn't it? Doesn't fall on the grid line. The grid line is about there. So we need to move all this over a little bit. So it doesn't have to be right on the vertical grid line, but somewhere much closer to it. Usually just inside, I find, is the best. So most of this is going to be just silhouette. There's a shape here that I see in a block, almost like those stairs, those steps that we put in last week's painting. It's just, I just see things in a rectangle. Like that, almost like a long rectangle. As I said, that's not particularly important today. What's important is the silhouette, is the line, the contour drawing, this horizontal landmass. It does something like this. Just before it goes out of shot, there's some nearer buildings coming towards us on the right, and we'll just make an abstract shape back there. Please don't spend too much time doing that line work. It's an approximation. We're going to get all this silhouette, this skyline to the tops of those buildings with paint. So all I want you to do is keep that design shape in mind. Okay, keep bringing that up. I want you to be thinking about this all the time, okay, while you're doing this. So the dark shape is about here, seems to move something like this in this direction for a short while. And then this landmass, there's not much of that. Now there's a temptation for us all, I know, I'm going to warn you, that this line here, as we come towards us, you make it too long. Because in your head, you think that looks like a long stretch of path, or a long stretch of shape. We bring it down here. It's really very short. I've probably even overdone it myself there a little bit. I think it's no more than about 2 inches from where it turns there to here. And then here's another, this is where the grid comes in again. When it does turn this way, look at where it goes out of shot in the photo. Right bang on that vertical grid line. See how our focal point is here, and the disappearing edge of this nearer landmass is vertical, right on top of it. Now, that's okay. There are other situations where I wouldn't, I would say try to avoid a coincidence like that. When things are close together on top of each other, you avoid those verticals. But in this case, it's okay because it doesn't go out right on top of it anyway, but it goes out more or less underneath it. Great, it's really quite a nice movement in there. Okay, now the only other things you've got to think about here, and this is more to do with paint, is this lovely arrowhead-like shape of the water. Okay, now I purposely haven't mentioned, I haven't cluttered our heads too much with tonal, with the issues of the tonal thumbnail sketch. But if you can, try to make a tonal sketch as well, because look, there's the darkest area showing off the movement. Okay, the lightest area, let's go completely the opposite direction now. That's the darkest shape. Let's go to the lightest shape, and it's an area of shimmering water about here. You can see that shape there, the smallest shape to it about there. The next tone is probably the sky and the right-hand side of the beach around here. This is the next tone with the sky. And then there's a fourth tone, which tends to be the water in this arrowhead area here, and the water behind the actual, the sea, that is, sorry, behind. See, I never, when I'm working on these things, they're not anything to me other than shapes and tonal values. I'm not thinking, now, what is that? You know, oh, it's a building. What is that? Oh, it's the sea. What is that? Oh, it's a mountain in the background. It's a shape. It's never any more than a shape. So we have then what's left is this area here that is probably very similar to the area there in that shape of the water. So those tones, I think we're dealing with no more than about 4 tonal values there. Okay. So, as I said, I just want you to keep this design in mind throughout. Let's get the paint going. So you'll notice probably I haven't placed boats in here, though we can later with the paintbrush. I haven't told the viewer how many buildings there are here because, well, the photograph doesn't reveal it that clearly anyway. But mostly because it's contre-jour, your detail like that is going to be limited. And that's even accounting for the limitations of a photograph, that the camera can't pick up on the subtleties of shapes and colors and tones that are in this area here. It just flattens the photograph just flattens everything close to one tone. Right, so there's the shape. There's everything I need to do with pencil. Let's get some paint going. Now, it's your call, folks, what you're most happy with. I see a lot of geometrical shape up here, okay? So, and this is just me, please don't go thinking this is the way you must do it. But I'm more comfortable with a flat brush when I'm dealing with something that I identify as having geometrical shape to it. There are other people who will paint everything with a round brush, and that's absolutely fine, each to their own in that case, but I'm going to use the flat brush for here. But I want you to watch what I do when I get over to areas like this, okay, outside the sort of movement area. I'm picking up some water, and I'm just going to make what's predominantly probably just just show you this mix, a sort of shadowy type color, but it'll be a bit more than that. But we'll start with a shadow-like color. And actually, let me, we should be working on the sky first, and I do apologize. I'm still going to use this color. So ultramarine blue and a very, very small amount of burnt sienna, okay? So it's quite, it's not really that strong. If you think that looks strong, what you've got to consider is this. That amount of paint there is going to do all of the sky probably, okay? So that means I'm picking up extra water. But watch the brush strokes. Now, don't worry if you come down over the buildings, that's fine. What I want you to do is, if you like, okay, place your finger in the focal point here. Just keep your finger there, okay? And move your brush strokes in towards it like this. Now that's, you don't go knocking these, if you get this dry brush effect that I've got here, don't go trying to fill it in. We need that. That's good. Okay. So in this area here, this brush is great for this. It gives me these sort of striations. I can get a point. I can make sort of, you know, sort of almost like arrows, if you like this. Now then, very quickly, before this gets a chance to dry out, just going to pick up a bit of raw sienna. Show you. I'm just going over to my palette here. I'm mixing that raw sienna up here, somewhere where the blue is not. So I'm keeping this raw sienna cleanish. Didn't bother cleaning the brush. Don't need to do that, but do keep this little puddle that you've just made separate. Now I'm just going to warm up some areas of the sky. Now it's not particularly evident this in the photo, but that's the photo, and we're not here to copy the photo. There's, as I say, don't worry about the landmass for a moment. It's going to be there in a moment when we, I'll probably speed dry this, but that's what I want the sky to look like. And further to this, I'm cleaning my 1-inch flat brush here, as you can't see me doing, but I'm cleaning the brush in the water tub and rinsing it with my thumb and forefinger. And what I'll do is I'll just lift out some extra lines like this, giving us some softer, giving the sky a slightly softer look about it, nice summery sky. So just agitating the paint like this by jiffing the brush back and forth. And every time I disappear, this brush disappears from your screen, I'm putting it in the water tub and cleaning it again. You can't just keep lifting out like this and not clean the brush each time. So there it is. I've just cleaned it out. We'll have a few more lift outs. This is called lifting out, this technique. Probably, I'm sure you're already familiar with that term. So there's a bank of cloud on the horizon back there. So we'll do a little lift out back there. And just keep doing this until you feel as though you've got a convincing looking sky. That nobody, you know, there's nobody here to sort of, unfortunately, can hold your hand here. You have to sort of say, that looks good to me, you know, or should I stop here perhaps? Whatever you do, when you're cleaning your brush and you come back to lift out, don't have too much water left in the brush. That will be a disaster, I'm afraid. If I don't rinse, I'll show you what I'm doing here. I'm dunking the brush in the water, okay, and I'm really squeezing all the water out with the thumb and the index finger here. I'm not over my painting, obviously, but I'm really getting rid of the water, because if you have water in here and you're trying to do what I'm doing, what you'll end up with is what we call a cauliflower, a bloom, a runback, whatever you want to call it. So you must make sure there's no excess water in that brush every time you go back into lift out like this. It becomes second nature when you're doing a lot of this. You just do it in seconds. But it's an easy mistake to make if you don't rid the brush of water, if you don't get rid of the water out of the brush. Okay, I'm still going to go a little bit lighter over the tops of the horizon back there. And what I'm going to do now is, you know, we've got the same colors occurring, haven't we, in this painting. So I'm going to go back into the area back here and put some sea in. But look at what I do. I leave a little slither of light between the sky, between what was the sky and the sea down here. Now there's a technique coming up. I'm not going to use it just here. Dry brush to get that sparkle on the sea. I'm not going to use it here because the sea's too far away and you can't see that much sparkle. So I'm going in here because there's that pier, that jetty or pier, whatever you want to call it, about here. I mean, you could go over that as well, but I fancy leaving a little bit of light on top of that for when we get to it. Then there's a little stretch of sand. So we pick up the raw sienna, very quick color change, and that's something else you need to do quickly. I was straight into the water tub, did exactly the same as I did for lifting out the sky. I took out the blue and put the burnt sienna back in its place. There's a hit of sand just here, okay? And for my painting, whether it's how close this is to the actual photo, I'm not worried. I'm just going to take this up into what is the harbour area here, and then down here. Much bigger brush strokes now. Another quick load of the raw sienna, loading of the raw sienna, and I'm just going to put that sand in like this. Now remember what we said about tonal values, okay? That's weak paint. It's got to be weak and light, because what's coming next, when this is dried off, we're going to have the darkest edge, movement edge here, against the lightest flat area here. That's where the power and the dynamics are going to come from. Let me just make good that. I'm not going to get too fussy about that there. Not really what I'm worried about. So there we are. If you want, I've noticed almost out of chance and luck, I've left a little path there, which is sort of copying the photo in this occasion. Now you could go into that area with the burnt sienna, with the raw sienna. It wouldn't make a jot of difference as long as you don't put it in too strong. Okay, just to prove the point, I'm just giving it a wash of raw sienna. But what I will do if I do this is keep, is once I've got the area wet, as you just saw me do, I'll just put in a couple of slightly stronger marks, but directional. Look at the flow of the brush. I'm already thinking about that design. Comes across here, down here, from here, round the bend here, and down in front of us down here. Now, I left this purposely because I want a shimmering water effect. So what I'm doing here is I'm being very careful not to put water in the brush. This brush does not have much water in it because I just used it all up on this bit here. So all the water that was in this brush is now over here on my painting. So don't pick up more water to do this. Pick up the ultramarine blue. You can already tell it's quite dryish. Pick up a little bit of raw sienna into there. Again, no water. Try to break that habit. The hand wants to go and get water all the time. The hand has a brain of its own. You must fight that off. So that's quite a dry-ish mix now. And that's what will give me my shimmering water effect. But you've got to be light of hand. You've got to skim over that water like this. Okay. There we are. Something like that. Now, I'm probably going to have to come back in some places. I'm going to turn the brush on. That was the flat of the brush, by the way. Almost no downward pressure. That was just the weight of the brush itself allowed to skim across the surface of the paper. Okay. You can say, well, I just want a little definition back there because that's what I can see. There's some definition. So this becomes the blade of the brush, not the flat of the brush. Okay. And then there's a shape in here. You've got to be really careful here. I'm going to leave it at that. And if I don't like it by the end of the painting, what I'll do is I will just come back into it with, duplicating probably what I've just done. Because I don't think I'll be 100% happy with that, but I know that what I want to do to that can't all be done with one in one sort of go. Okay, so this room's quite warm, so I'm just going to speed dry this very quickly.
Okay, folks, that brings us to the end of part 1. Part 2 you will be able to see next week. It will be uploaded to YouTube in a week's time from today. So hope you've enjoyed this. Please be sure to tune in for the next session, part 2. And if you like what you've already seen, please remember to subscribe and hit the like button, and of course hit the bell icon if you want notification of that new release as and when it's uploaded. You get immediate notification as to when part 2 will be uploaded. So thanks for watching, and hope that you're there for the next one.